Welcome, everyone, to the Mind Master Book Club. Come on in. Actually, I'm just pouring us a couple glasses of wine right now.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, a nice
Oh,
heavy
oh.
pour, please. It's been a week.
Got it. Settle in, guys. Today, we are doing a deep dive into an absolute titan of a book. It's called Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. And it's by James Clear.
Such a monumental book. Like, it
Wow.
literally changed how I view my entire morning routine.
Right. Same here. And hey, before we get too deep into the wine and the psychology, just a warm, friendly reminder to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future book club sessions.
Yes, definitely subscribe. We've got so much good stuff coming up.
We really do. But today, our core mission for this deep dive is to, understand exactly why our brains are so prone to locking into these patterns. Like, how can we hack our own psychology to become the people we actually want to be without relying on just sheer exhausting willpower?
Yeah, because willpower is it's completely overrated.
Yeah.
But I think to really set the stage here, we have to talk about James Clear's backstory. Because he didn't just study this stuff in some, sterile lab.
No, not at all. It's an intense story.
It really is. Like, his sophomore year of high school, he's playing baseball, right? And a classmate takes this huge, aggressive swing with a bat, and the bat literally slips out of his hands.
Oh, my gosh.
It
Yeah.
flies across the field and hits James directly between the eyes.
Jeez. Just out of nowhere.
Completely out of nowhere. And it crushed his nose into this distorted U shape, shattered both of his eye sockets. He had multiple severe skull fractures.
Which is just horrifying.
Right. And the kinetic energy was so intense that his brain basically slammed against the inside of his skull. So the swelling was immediate. By the time he got to the nurse's office, he thought it was 1998, but it was actually 2002.
He wouldn't even remember his own mom's name, right?
Exactly. It took him like 10 excruciating seconds just to recall her name. And it got worse. His body started shutting down because of the pressure on his brainstem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He lost the ability to swallow, stopped breathing on his own, started having these massive seizures. They had to hand pump air into his lungs and literally airlift him to a hospital in Cincinnati where they put him in a medically induced coma.
On a ventilator just to keep him alive.
Just to survive the night. And the craziest part is his parents were intimately familiar with that exact hospital because like a decade earlier, his sister had battled leukemia there.
Oh, wow. I mean, the trauma for that family is just unimaginable.
Completely. And his recovery was agonizing. When he woke up, he had lost his sense of smell. He had double vision. And when he finally tried to go back to baseball a year later, which was like his entire identity, he got cut from the varsity team.
Which is just heartbreaking. But this is the crucible moment, isn't it?
It is. Because when you go through trauma like that, your executive functioning, the part of your brain that makes long-term plans and sets big goals, it's just overwhelmed. He couldn't set a goal to be an All-American athlete, couldn't even walk straight.
Right. He had to start unbelievably small.
Exactly. So in college, he just focused on these tiny micro routines. Going to bed early, keeping his dorm room meticulously neat, lifting weights a couple times a week.
Just to regain a sense of control.
Yeah. It rebuilt his internal locus of control. A clean room reduced his cognitive load, so he studied better. He got straight A's. He bulked up to 200 pounds. And by his senior year, he was the top male athlete at his university and an academic All-American.
It's just a profound testament to human resilience.
Okay, let's unpack this. If habits are just automatic solutions to recurring problems, like the ones that saved his life, why do we hold on to bad habits that clearly cause more problems? That is the ultimate question, right?
Yeah.
And to answer it, Clear takes us into the fundamentals, starting with Chapter 1, The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits. And he brings up this amazing story about British cycling.
Oh, the Dave Brailsford story. I love this one.
It's so good. So for like over a century, British cyclists were the laughingstock of the sports world. They'd won exactly one Olympic gold since 1908, never won the Tour de France.
I read that bike manufacturers wouldn't even sell to them because it would hurt their brand.
Literally. They were a walking PR disaster. But then in 2003, They hired Dave Brailsford as the performance director. And his whole philosophy was this thing called the aggregation of marginal gains.
Right. He didn't look for one massive fix.
No, he looked for a 1% improvement in literally everything. They heated the overshorts to keep muscle temperature perfect. They tested different massage gels for faster recovery.
They even hired a surgeon to teach them how to wash their hands, right? To avoid catching colds.
Yes. And they painted the floor of the team truck stark white so they could spot tiny specks of dust that might degrade the bike gears.
That is just clinical obsession. But the math of that 1% is what's so crazy. Like, improving by 1% on a Tuesday is basically invisible.
Wholly invisible.
But if you get 1% better every day for a year, compounding interest kicks in, and you end up 37 times better by the end of the year.
37 times. It's wild.
And there's a quote here I just have to read. Let me find it. Here. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Wow, that hit hard. It just puts it right into perspective.
It really does. It means that our life outcomes, like our weight, our bank accounts, even the clutter on our desks, they are just lagging measures of our habits.
Lagging measures. I love that term.
Right. Your net worth isn't about today. It's a lagging measure of your financial habits over the last 5 years. You get exactly what you repeat.
But that's so frustrating when you're trying to change because you put in effort for a week and expect linear progress.
Exactly. And that brings us to what he calls the plateau of latent potential. We expect linear results, but habits work on an exponential curve.
The ice cube analogy.
Yes,
Yeah.
the ice cube. So imagine you're in a freezing room, 25 degrees, there's an ice cube on the table, you work super hard to heat the room, 26, 27, 28 degrees.
And nothing is happening. The ice cube is just sitting there.
Right. You get to 31 degrees, you're exhausted, and you're like, this isn't working. I'm quitting.
Right.
But then,
It's hit 32 degrees.
and it melts. Suddenly you have this massive transformation. But it was the latent potential you built up during all those freezing months that actually melted the ice.
Oh man, taking a sip of this Pinot to that is deep. So how do we actually survive that plateau without quitting?
Well, we have to move to chapter 2, how your habits shape your identity. Because most people set goals completely backward. Clear visualizes change as 3 concentric circles.
Like a dartboard.
Exactly. The outside layer is outcomes. That's what you get. Losing weight, writing a book. The middle layer is processes. That's what you do, like going to the gym.
But the absolute center is identity, what you believe.
Yes. And the fatal flaw is we start from the outside. We say, I want to lose 10 pounds, so I will run. But deep down, our identity is still, I'm a lazy couch potato.
So as soon as the motivation drops, cognitive dissonance kicks in, and the couch potato stops running.
Precisely. You have to build identity-based habits. The story of Brian Clark in the book is a perfect example. He was a severe nail biter his whole life. Tried everything.
The bitter polish, willpower, all of it.
Yeah, none of it worked. But then he gets a professional manicure on a whim, and the manicurist tells him, wow, underneath this, you actually have really nice, healthy nail beds.
Just a totally casual comment.
Right, but it triggered an identity shift. He stopped viewing himself as a nervous nail biter, and suddenly he was a guy with nice nails.
And a guy with nice nails doesn't chew them off. It's brilliant. It's an issue of character, not discipline. Which brings up another incredible quote from the book. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
I mean, let that sink in.
Seriously, like my actions are just dropping little suggestions into a ballot box in my brain. Hey, you drink water instead of soda. Maybe you're a healthy person.
And you don't need a unanimous vote to win the election. You just need the majority. You're going to eat the pizza sometimes. Just make sure the majority of your votes are for the identity you want.
Okay, so how do we physically cast those votes? Let's move to chapter 3. How to build better habits in 4 simple steps.
So this is the neurological feedback loop. Cue, craving, response, reward.
The 4 C's. Well, wait, cue, craving, response, reward, not C's.
Right. So the cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior because it predicts a reward.
Like your phone buzzing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which instantly triggers the craving. You don't crave checking the phone. You crave the state change, the distraction, or the dopamine hit.
Then comes the response, which is the actual action.
Yep. And if you do the action, you get the reward, which satisfies the craving and teaches your brain to remember that exact loop for next time.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Think of habits like the entrance ramp to a highway. Before you even realize you've merged, you're doing 70 miles an hour down a path you didn't consciously choose.
That is the perfect analogy.
Great, because your brain just bypassed conscious thought. So how do we build toll booths on these ramps?
Well, that's what Clear calls the 4 laws of behavior change. If you want a good habit, you make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Let's dive right into the first law then, chapter 4. The man who didn't look right. We need to talk about making it obvious.
Yeah, we have to talk about unconscious competence, because our brains are terrifyingly good at recognizing cues without our permission.
Like the paramedic example.
Yes, a veteran paramedic can glance at a patient and instantly know they're having a heart attack just from a microshift in their skin tone. Or a military analyst spotting a missile on a radar just by intuition.
Which is great for survival, but terrible for bad habits. Like, you don't even realize you open a new tab for social media the second you feel stressed at work.
Exactly. You've lost agency. So we have to make the unconscious conscious again. And the Japanese railway system has this amazing trick for this.
Oh, the pointing and calling system.
It looks so silly, but it's genius. The train operators literally point at the signals and say out loud, "Signal is green." They point at the speedometer and call out the speed.
Because it forces the brain to engage with an automatic task. It physicalizes it. I think the book said it reduces errors by like 85%.
It does. And we can do this using a habit scorecard. You just write down everything you do in the morning, wake up, turn off alarm, check phone, brush teeth.
And then you just point and call. Checking Instagram in bed, that's a negative habit. You don't judge yourself, you just raise awareness.
Right. Because you can't change a cue you don't even see. Which leads right into chapter 5, the best way to start a new habit.
Implementation intentions.
Exactly. Vague goals like, I'm going to work out more, completely fail. You need a specific formula. I will behavior at time and location.
So I will read one chapter at 7 p.m. in my armchair.
Yes. You're giving your brain a very specific trigger. And you can take it a step further with habit stacking.
I love habit stacking. After current habit, I will new habit.
Because your current habits, like pouring coffee, already have thick neural pathways. You just piggyback on them. After I pour my coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
It's so seamless. But we have to talk about chapter 6 and 7 because this is about environment and self-control. And honestly, this blew my mind.
The idea that motivation is overrated and environment matters more.
Yes. Every habit is tied to a context. Like if I sit on my couch, my brain screams Netflix time, even if I plan to read.
Right, the environment usually wins. If you want stable habits, you need a stable environment. The desk is for work, the bed is for sleep. Don't mix contexts.
But wait, let me push back on this. If willpower is just a finite muscle and it's all about environment, aren't we setting ourselves up for failure? Like, instead of trying not to drink the wine, shouldn't we just remove the wine from the house entirely?
You absolutely should remove the wine. That's the inversion of the first law. Make it invisible. People with high self-control don't actually fight intense battles every day. They just spend less time in tempting situations.
Oh, wow. So they just hide the cookies, they put the phone in another room.
Exactly. Willpower is an emergency backup system. Environment design is the long-term strategy.
That makes so much sense. Okay, pouring a little more wine here as we move to the second law. Make it attractive. This covers chapters 8 through 10.
Right. The craving stage. And we have to talk about Nico Tinbergen's experiment with the herring gulls in the 1940s.
Cardboard bird heads.
Yes. So baby gulls instinctively peck at this little red dot on their mother's beak to get food. Tinbergen made a fake cardboard beak with a red dot and the chicks pecked at it.
But then he made it crazy, right? He took a yellow wooden stick with 3 giant red dots on it.
And the chicks lost their minds. They ignored the real mothers and furiously pecked at the wooden stick. It's what he called a supernormal stimulus.
And we are basically those baby chicks.
We really are. Modern junk food is engineered to hit the perfect bliss point of sugar, salt, and fat. Social media gives us hyper-concentrated hits of social approval.
They're wooden sticks with giant red dots. They hijack our brains. So how do we fight back and make our good habits irresistible?
Well, Chapter 8 introduces temptation bundling. You link an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Like Ronan Byrne, the engineering student with the stationary bike.
That story is incredible. He wired his bike to his laptop, so Netflix would only play if he pedaled fast enough.
He literally bundled his craving for Netflix with the friction of cardio. That is genius. But what about the people around us? Chapter 9 gets into the role of family and friends.
Right. Social gravity. We naturally imitate the habits of 3 groups: the close, the many, and the powerful.
So the close is our family, the many is the tribe or the crowd, and the powerful is people with high status.
Exactly. If you want to build a good habit, join a culture where that behavior is normal. Join a running group or a book club.
Okay, but so what does this all mean if your culture is toxic? If we're surrounded by friends who normalize bad habits, how do we successfully swim upstream without alienating our friends?
It's super tough. You face severe identity conflict. The workaround is diversifying your social portfolio. You don't have to dump your old friends, but you need to find a new tribe where your desired habit is normal, based on a shared interest.
So instead of a generic sobriety group, you join a rock climbing gym where people just happen to not drink.
Exactly. You bond over climbing, and sobriety is just a byproduct of the culture.
That's a great reframe. And speaking of reframing, Chapter 10 talks about fixing the causes of bad habits.
Yes, the idea that ancient desires are driving our modern vices.
There's a quote here: "A craving is just a specific manifestation of a deeper underlying motive." Let me just take a sip of wine. Man, it's so liberating to realize we aren't broken.
We aren't. We're just using outdated software. Browsing Facebook is just our ancient drive to connect with the tribe.
So if we reframe our vocabulary shifting from "I have to" "I get to," it changes everything. I get to build endurance instead of "I have to run."
It rewires the brain to see the opportunity, not the burden. Make the good habit attractive. And for bad habits, invert it. Make it unattractive.
Which brings us to the bottleneck. The third law, make it easy, chapters 11 through 14.
And Chapter 11 makes a huge distinction between being in motion versus taking action.
Yes, motion feels like progress, but it's just planning, like buying a meal prep cookbook. Action is actually chopping the vegetables.
Motion is a comfortable form of procrastination. And the University of Florida photography class study proves this perfectly.
Oh, this study is wild. Tell them about it.
So a professor divides his class in half. The left side is the quantity group. They get an A if they submit 100 photos. Quality doesn't matter, just volume.
And the right side is the quality group. They only need one single perfect photo to get an A.
Right. And at the end of the semester, every single one of the best photos came from the quantity group.
Because the quality group spent the whole semester in motion, theorizing, planning, paralyzed by perfection.
While the quantity group was out taking action, making mistakes, and actually learning, practice beats planning every time.
But taking action requires energy, which brings us to Chapter 12 and the law of least effort. Humans are wired to follow the path of least resistance.
Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, illustrates this on a massive scale. Agriculture spread way faster across Europe and Asia because they sit on an east-west axis.
So the climate stays consistent, less friction.
Exactly. But the Americas are north-south. Massive environmental friction, moving from snow to tropics. Human civilization expanded along the path of least resistance.
Just like the Japanese factories in the 70s using addition by subtraction, they just removed unnecessary movement from the factory floor to optimize workflow.
If you want to work out in the morning, remove the friction. Put your gym clothes next to your bed the night before.
Which leads to the magic of the 2-minute rule in Chapter 13. Scale it down, read a book becomes read one page.
Fold the laundry becomes fold one pair of socks.
And here's the quote that sums it up. A habit must be established before it can be improved.
Yes.
It's so true. We try to optimize everything before we even standardize it. You can't improve a habit that doesn't exist.
Exactly. You just have to master the art of showing up.
But wait, making things easy sounds great, but doesn't true growth require pain and friction? Does the law of least effort accidentally encourage mediocrity?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
But the law of least effort is just for the establishment phase. You want the entrance ramp to be frictionless. Once you're on the highway, you introduce desirable difficulties to keep growing.
Ah, okay. Start easy, then dial up the intensity. And to break a bad habit in Chapter 14, we make it difficult.
Yes, using commitment devices, buying a good mattress to automate better sleep, or using an app to block social media.
Make doing the wrong thing impossible. Right, we've arrived at the fourth law, make it satisfying. Chapters 15 to 17.
The cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated.
The word immediately is doing heavy lifting there, because we have ancient brains living in a delayed return environment.
Right. Our ancestors survived by focusing on immediate caloric rewards. Today, we work for a paycheck we won't see for a month. We save for retirement 40 years away.
So if the payoff is years away, we have to artificially manufacture an immediate reward, like the public health workers in Pakistan in the 90s.
Such a great example. They wanted people to wash their hands to stop diseases, but explaining delayed health benefits didn't work.
So they gave them premium Safeguard soap.
It lathered great, smelled amazing. It made the habit an immediate, pleasurable sensory experience. And the habit stuck instantly.
Because it felt successful in the moment. And Chapter 16 gives us a way to track that success visually. The paperclip strategy.
Trent Dersmed, the stockbroker, he put 120 paper clips in a jar. Every time he made a cold call, he moved one clip to an empty jar.
It gives you that immediate micro reward of seeing your progress. But the golden rule of tracking is never miss twice.
Right, because missing one day is an anomaly. Missing 2 days is the start of a new bad habit.
But there's a pitfall, right? Goodhart's law.
Yeah, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. If you obsess over the number on the scale, you might starve yourself, completely ruining the actual goal of getting healthy.
You optimize the tracker instead of the habit. So dangerous. Okay, Chapter 17, the inversion. Make it unsatisfying. Habit contracts.
Thomas Frank's automated tweet. He set a script to tweet at 6:10 a.m. saying he was lazy and offering $5 to anyone who replied.
If he didn't wake up by 6:05 to cancel it, he lost money and got humiliated. Okay, let's unpack this. If we make failure too painful with a habit contract, don't we risk burning out or developing anxiety around our goals? How do we balance accountability with self-compassion?
It's a tightrope. Accountability only works if the punishment deters you without paralyzing you. The goal isn't self-flagellation. It's just adding enough friction to counteract the dopamine of the bad habit.
A structural deterrent, not emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Love that. All right, let's move into the final stretch. Advanced tactics, chapters 18 to 20, going from good to truly great.
And we have to talk about talent. Because genes matter. They don't eliminate the need for hard work, they clarify it.
Michael Phelps versus Hitchem El Guerrouj.
Right. Phelps has a long torso and short legs, perfect for swimming. El Guerrouj has a short torso and long legs, perfect for distance running.
If you switch their sports, they both fail. So you have to pick a game where the odds are in your favor.
And once you find that game, you use the Goldilocks rule from Chapter 19 to stay motivated.
Working right on the edge of your current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy.
But eventually, even that gets repetitive. Which brings up this quote. The greatest threat to success is not failure, but boredom. Professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way.
Taking a long, thoughtful sip for that one.
Right. Falling in love with boredom is the true secret of elite performers. doing the reps when you're exhausted and unmotivated.
But Chapter 20 warns us about the downside of good habits.
Complacency. When a habit becomes automatic, you stop paying attention to small errors. Habits plus deliberate practice equals mastery.
Like Pat Riley's career best effort program with the LA Lakers in the 80s.
Exactly. He tracked every micro-step boxing out, diving for balls, and forced the players to improve their baseline by a tiny margin constantly.
A master class in continuous reflection and review. You have to keep upgrading your identity. Wow. Okay, let's wrap this up with the ultimate lesson. Clear brings up the Sorite's paradox, the Greek parable of the coins.
If you give a person one coin, are they rich? No.
2 coins. Still no. But if you keep adding 1 coin, eventually you hit a tipping point. 1 single coin transforms them to being rich.
But it was the accumulation of all the previous coins that did the work.
Exactly. 1 tiny change won't transform your life today, but 1,000 atomic habits will. Because habits aren't about having something, they are about becoming someone.
And I'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. Think of your habits not just as tools for your own life, but as a butterfly effect. If your habits shape your identity, and your identity shapes how you interact with your family and your community, could one tiny 2-minute habit you establish tonight actually alter the trajectory of your entire family tree a century from now?
Oh, wow. The ripple effect of a single atomic habit. That is beautiful. Thank you all so much for hanging out, sipping wine, and diving deep with us today. Don't forget to subscribe to the Mind Master channel and drop a comment below with the 1 atomic habit you plan to start tomorrow. We'll see you next time.